So I feel like everyone has their own struggles, their own troubles. When you're bipolar, you might have a few more ups and downs, but I know that everyone deals with their own in their own way, and I try to remember that and not let my bipolar bring me down. So my name is Meach Crouch, and I go by Meach. I'm from Arlington, Mass. I also live here now. I live in my own apartment, which is a big deal for me. I've lived there for 5 years. Before that, I moved every 6 months. I have 2 cats, and they moved every 6 months with me too, so they're very happy that we've now lived where we live for 5 years. What I do for a living is I'm the office manager for DBSA Boston. I'm also a volunteer on their board and share care committee, and I'm also a facilitator and a tech buddy. And in my spare time, what I like to do is I love watching sports, go Pats, and I like to go to Lucky Strikes, go out with my friends, and go out to eat. When I was 16, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. There was kind of a couple of moments that caused it. There was a kid from my high school that committed suicide, and there was kind of a situation where I ended up in the hospital through a guidance counselor, and that was when they originally diagnosed me with bipolar, and then I started seeing a psychiatrist who confirmed the diagnosis. So it depends on if I'm medicated or unmedicated. I've now been taking my medication regularly for about 5 years, which makes sense. And before that, I would get extremely angry over little things, and I could almost feel it, the rage inside. Since I started taking my medication, that subsided a lot. Then last year, I started taking one other medication, and it's really since then, I don't really get those feelings at all. The ups and downs are very minimal. I always used to think addiction was worse than my bipolar. Everyone always says the chicken or the egg, but I came to find out throughout my life that they're both the same, and if I don't work on both my addiction and my bipolar together, I won't be able to get my life together. A lot of what I do is going to DBSA, Depression Bipolar Support Alliance. I've been a part of the organization now for over 10 years, volunteering for about 8. I also have some really strong friendships and friends that I can trust and call when I'm having a hard time. Me and my mother also have a really good relationship, and I know I can always reach out to her. I also have a psychiatrist, a doctor, and a therapist that I see on a regular basis. I love exercise. When I was a kid, I used to play basically every sport you could play. But now I ordered a punching bag online about 3 or 4 years ago, and I ended up popping it at one point. I wasn't sure if it was me or my cats, but I had to order a new tube for it. So I really like working out with that, and I do some free weights as well. Yeah, when it comes to the stigma, it's tough. Like I said, I'm also an addict, and it almost seems to me like there's less stigma with addiction these days, and it was really hard for me to admit to people that I had bipolar, and a lot less hard for me to admit that I was an addict. It took many years, but ever since starting to come to DBSA and working with NAMI and the NAMI Walk, I've really realized that there's a lot less stigma. Unfortunately, there is still a little out there, and that's why I try not to, hide who I am. I'm okay with telling people and doing this interview. So I think it's really great that Gen Z and millennials have really started to embrace mental health awareness, but I really hope that some of the other generations can also start to see that progress can be made when you put in the effort and start to listen to others. And even if you're not suffering from mental illness, if you know someone who is, or you think someone is, if you want to, approach them and ask them if they need something, don't hesitate to do that, even if you think you might get some backlash. I think eventually the person will appreciate it. Over the past 5 years specifically, a lot of things have changed. When I was 18, I was homeless for 3 years. And then, as I already said earlier, I moved every 6 months for about 6 years. In the past 5 years, I've been able to move into my apartment, keep everything clean, not cause problems with the neighbors. And then actually 2 years ago, right before COVID, I bought my first car. And that was really the thing that was the biggest thing for me, to know that I'm at a point where I'm at the highest point I've been, I would say. When I bought the car, I had already been, I had had periods of sobriety before, but I had never gotten to that point. So being able to keep the apartment and buy the car really showed me that I was making improvements. And I know material stuff isn't everything, but being able to get to that point where other people were already at 15 years before me felt really good. Yeah, what do I hope for? I hope that at some point everyone realizes that we're all dealing with our own issues and struggles, and hopefully that helps break the stigma. I feel like the stigma has started to be broken when it comes to depression, but we still have work to do with bipolar. And I think once everyone realizes we all have our own issue to break through, we'll get somewhere in the mental health field.